Joining us now is Mike Benz. Mike does a wonderful job. Mike, thank you for taking the time. So, Mike, I want to keep our conversation very focused on what can be done. A separate time, we could talk about all the unanswered questions, of which there are aplenty, and the messaging fumble and all of that. If you were advising the President of the United States, if President Donald Trump called you up and said, Mike, what should I do that is reasonable, what would you tell him to do?
I would tell him to have Pam Bondi walk down the hallway at Main Justice to the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, and pull all files related to the November 2020 OPR report that evaluated Jeffrey Epstein's 2008 plea deal. In the process of that OPR investigation, they interviewed everyone at Justice who was involved in that 2008 plea deal, Jeffrey Epstein, and sought to put the story to bed by collecting transcribed interviews, audio, and basically reams of files. The report itself took 9 months to produce. It's 348 pages long, but it leaves out the critical information that's necessary for both the public and the current Justice Department to understand the Epstein issue. In particular, they interviewed Alex Acosta, the main Justice Department official who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart plea deal, about Epstein's intelligence ties. They have a one-line summary for that conversation buried in a footnote on footnote 244. Pull that transcript from DOJ, OPR, and Alex Acosta and make that transcript public so we know exactly what the Justice Department asked about Epstein's intelligence ties and exactly what Acosta, who cut the plea deal, said.
Okay, so let me just repeat that. So this was an OPR, Office of what again?
Professional Responsibility.
Professional Responsibility, internal report on Jeffrey Epstein. Is that correct?
Well, they produced it for the public. This was so. Here's the history of this. The second indictment for Jeffrey Epstein happened after I believe it was the Miami Herald published a kind of blockbuster series in 2018 about the contents of the secret plea deal that the Justice Department cut. The fact that it had been offered before the Justice Department even reviewed key evidence, that victims were not included in the talks about the plea deal, that it had been hijacked from the FBI, had been stopped from pursuing prosecution. That creates a big scandal. And in February 2019, the Justice Department announces that it's going to be conducting this basically, special review, this Office of Professional Responsibility review of the Epstein plea deal in response to the giant outrage over the Miami Herald series. Now, 5 months later, Jeffrey Epstein in July 2019 gets arrested on July 6, 2019. 3 days later, Vicky Ward publishes an article saying Alex Acosta said that Jeffrey Epstein belonged to intelligence, and that's why he cut him the plea deal. He was told to back off.
So here's my question. So are you saying that there are transcripts that could get released that were the underlying supportive material of this OPR report?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So you want the raw data underneath the OPR report, essentially. That's the thrust of your focus. If the president was asking, hey, what do I do?
Yes, because the meta question that hangs over this whole thing is it true? Did he get the plea deal because he, quote, belonged to intelligence? And if that's true, that's the question that just has to be answered, or at least has to be attempted to be answered, because that's really the great speculation that you can't answer fully without some sort of confirmation, or at least boxes being checked. Now, in that process, by the way, Charlie, OPR works with the CIA Office of General Counsel. The Office of General Counsel is who coordinates with the Justice Department OPR whenever there's anything sensitive or relating to classified or confidential information. Oftentimes, the DOJ and CIA will work together on any sort of classified element. And I would like to know, for example, I think the public has a right to know in the production of this November 2020 report, because it's so strange the way it's put together. It was supposed to put the intelligence issue to bed and they buried it in one line on page 169
Well,
and
okay, so
footnote
let's
244.
dive into that. So this is a big part of this. So the question is, was Jeffrey Epstein an intelligence asset? And some people are saying that he was an intelligence asset of Mossad. I do have to read this, and I want your response. This is from Naftali Bennett, former Israeli prime minister. He says yesterday, quote, "As former Israeli prime minister, with the Mossad having reported directly to me, I can say with you 100% certainty, quote, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel or the Mossad running a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. Epstein's conduct, both the criminal and merely despicable, had nothing whatsoever to do with Mossad or the State of Israel. Epstein never worked for the Mossad. This accusation is a lie being peddled by," he mentions Tucker Carlson by name, who's a friend of mine, but he does mention him, "and they just make things up, say with confidence and lies, this is vicious, lies, we will not take it anymore." It's a pretty strong, and this is on X, that is a pretty strong, let's say, response. So, rebuttal. Do you believe that, Mike? Pretty strong denial. Do you believe that, or number one? Number two, could Jeffrey Epstein been MI6, Central Intelligence, Saudi intelligence? Mike Benz.
When I hear that, I hear the same sort of carefully worded statement that I hear from the CIA side. I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein, his intelligence aspects were primarily around blackmail. I've never been really interested in the blackmail side of this. He was a financier. He was a financial fixer. The CIA, I can name 10 examples of the CIA using.
What do you mean a financial fixer? Because obviously he didn't make his money. I mean, he didn't earn it through trades or by market brilliance. So what do you mean by that?
Think about figures like Mark Rich and Bruce Rappaport. These are people who work with U.S. intelligence as well as Israeli intelligence, as well as intelligence agencies across the Five Eyes and across the sort of old Safari Club from the 70s and 80s. These are figures who have access to huge amounts of capital. And when the CIA wants to do something but off books in terms of transaction, or the State Department wants a pipeline done in the Middle East, but they need security, they need guarantees or buy-in from a couple of different governments or arms brokers. I mean, this is like the Adnan Khashoggi story, for example, right? Adnan Khashoggi, Jeffrey Epstein personally bragged that Adnan Khashoggi was one of his top clients in 1987. Well, what was Adnan Khashoggi doing in 1987? Adnan Khashoggi was the middleman between the U.S. and Israel on Iran-Contra. It was Adnan Khashoggi when he flew to the White House. Now Adnan Khashoggi was a Saudi, the biggest arms dealer in world history. He made 3 times more as a commissions agent for Lockheed Martin than every other arms broker combined, 3 times more.
So let me just interrupt you. Sorry, Mike. This is breaking news. This is 3:34. President Trump was asked about Jeffrey Epstein, saying that anything that is credible should be released. It's funny. We said the same thing yesterday, just moments ago. Play cut 3:34.
On Epstein, of the review of the files, Attorney General Pam Bondi.
A very quick briefing.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the file?
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well. And it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release.
That's the end at the kicker here, and it's a little. So Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt because that was very important. We're going to go long here, by the way, so we're going to be able to cover this from all dimensions. So based on your original point, that OPR, Office of General Counsel transcript would be credible, right, and then potentially could be released. So that would fit within what you're talking about here, Mike Benz.
Exactly. Hard forensic evidence. I also believe that on the CIA side, you're not looking for blackmail. Look, I'm not saying blackmail didn't happen. I don't know if it did or didn't, but I don't see the evidence that it did. And it wouldn't be Epstein himself who would be doing it, because then you lose all the access and you lose all the deal brokering if you have a reputation as a blackmailer. The fact is what the CIA needs first and foremost is money. Jeffrey Epstein's career started at the time of the creation of a private CIA in the CIA. He started his career at Bear Stearns under Ace Greenberg in 1976. He was there until 1980. That's the exact period under Jimmy Carter when the CIA got destroyed in the budget, got all these handcuffs placed on it. In 1979, Iran fell. And this is what set off a whole private CIA operation through Iran-Contra and the Iran-Iraq War between 1980 and 1988. And it was this exact network of financiers, primarily around U.S., Israel, but also UK, France, and Saudi, and their interests in having to deal with Iran. And so you have these financial fixers. Like, let's just stick with this Khashoggi story for a second.
Yeah,
here.
you got 30 seconds. Sorry, Mike. Keep going.
It was Khashoggi, when Khashoggi flew to the White House in 1983 to meet with Ronald Reagan's national security advisor to pitch the idea of arms to Iran to sell the proceeds to Nicaragua. That was the whole plan was how do you do that despite an arms embargo, the fact that it's illegal. So what they did is they used Israel as a middleman to sell the arms and then achieve the goals in Nicaragua. But this was a U.S. intelligence operation that needed covert financing through Adnan Khashoggi, Jeffrey Epstein client, in order to sell arms to Iran to basically have a proxy war in Nicaragua. What I'm saying is this is the sort of thing that you need for covert action. You need covert financing. Jeffrey Epstein, everyone who talks to him.
Okay, so let me just be sorry, Mike. I'm going to blow through the brakes here. But then where do you think is the source of the money then?
Well, I think the source of the money are the folks in different aspects of the finance world who are principally who have access to the pools of money that Epstein brokers. So, for example, I think that Jeffrey Epstein got his start of his career serving Bear Stearns. Well, I think it started, with the Edgar Bronfman and the Ace Greenberg network.
10 seconds. We'll be right back. Let's blow through the brakes. I'm trying to make sense of this because Mike's onto something. Stay right there. Okay, got it. So Mike Benz is here. So Mike, I'm just trying to understand here so basically your theory is he helped intelligence agencies by providing funds to people they wanted to give to indirectly. He was a money man. Is that and the sex stuff was a sideshow because he was a creep, pervert, evil person. Is that right?
Yeah, not even thinking about the sex stuff. That's not what would be in the intelligence files. What I believe you would find if you looked for it would be the different financial transactions, the private financial. So the role would not be as an asset. And this is why I say I don't like when I hear the phrase intelligence asset. And whenever I hear Pam Bondi being asked about it or Alex Acosta being asked about intelligence asset, I think, well, that's a limited hangout. You know what you're asking there. You know that's not the question. There is not going to be a human 201 file on Jeffrey Epstein. There never is for financial fixers. I did a study recently of 10 financial fixers that the CIA used for various covert financing.
Name
for covert
one
action.
high-profile one that people would know.
Bruce Rappaport, Mark Rich. As I just said, I have a list on me if you want me to go through some of the names.
Fine. Yeah. So the intelligence financial fixer, someone who is given a pool of money and distributes it upon command.
No. They're not given a pool of money. They have access to money. So let me give you an example. Okay, in 1951, declassified CIA records show the head of research and analysis for the CIA sending a letter to the head of the CIA saying, next time you talk to the Ford Foundation, ask them if they can provide financing to the following universities. Now, this is because the CIA doesn't have enough money in the budget to fund 30 different universities. They want financing for research done at universities on Sovietology, on what's going on in Africa or Asia. They don't have the money for it. They can't get it through Congress, but they have friends of the station. And so they will speak with outside groups, or they'll speak with foundations or hedge fund managers to arrange financing that is not on the CIA's books, and that will accomplish the goal. It's the same thing with Epstein. Epstein I don't think is moving CIA money. The CIA has a goal, for example, in the Middle East. They want a pipeline constructed, or they want some initiative to go through, but it requires juicing the deal by getting buy-in from folks in Saudi Arabia, folks in Egypt, folks in France. Somebody has to put that deal together and be responsible for the deal in case it goes wrong. And also, sometimes these deals are quite dirty, or they inflame other allies of the United States. So the U.S. does not want to look like.
Hold that thought. Stay right there, Mike. Stay right there. Okay, go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Check it out right now. Patriotmobile.com is amazing. Make the switch right now. I realize there are many choices when it comes to who to choose for your cell phone service, and there are new ones popping up all the time. But here's the truth. There's only one that boldly stands in the gap. For more than 12 years, Patriot Mobile's been on the front lines fighting for our God-given rights and freedoms. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Don't just take my word for it. Ask the hundreds of thousands of Americans who've made the switch. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Call 972-PATRIOT today, or go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Again, use promo code Charlie for a free month of service. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie, and make the switch today. Mike, please continue your thoughts. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
Okay. So let's use a specific example. I mentioned a couple names like Bruce Rappaport, Mark Rich, and the like. So Bruce Rappaport, there's a scandal that folks would do well to look back at today, and that was the pipeline scandal in the 1980s that involved Ronald Reagan's attorney general during the attempted construction of a pipeline through Iraq. Now, this was that the Iraq was being the pipeline was to be built by basically the Bechtel Halliburton network, a U.S. company, but there was a lot of tensions because of the Iran-Iraq war, and so the U.S. government wanted this pipeline done. The CIA wanted this pipeline done. They believed that it would advance U.S. interest to do so, but they wanted to make sure that Israel did not attack the pipeline because of its proximity to the conflict zone. So what they did is they engaged Bruce Rappaport, a outside, highly controversial financier, Swiss Israeli, who was also basically a very close friend of William Casey, the CIA director. They were golfing buddies. They were close friends. They met very frequently, and Bruce Rappaport played the role of not only providing the financing, but ensuring that there would be security guarantees, because he was very close with friends in the Israeli government. Now, what happened there was there ended up being a special prosecutor investigation into the Attorney General of the United States because of this scandal, because they argued that there was kind of a pay-to-play aspect going on with this. And they argued that there were bribes, but what Bruce Rappaport ended up saying later was, no. There were no bribes. According to this secret deal, the Israeli government was actually going to get a 30% equity stake in it. So nobody actually got paid. But the fact is, at that point, you need to coordinate 4 different Middle East governments, as well as U.S. and U.S. contractor interests in this. So this is what I believe the girls are in the Epstein story. Girls juice deals. When you are having to coordinate with all these sort of Saudi sheikhs and high net worth individuals, and you're doing business, you're doing deals, and being around young women for parties and things like that, is a way to create an environment where people like hanging out with you and want to do deals with you because these deals last for years. They want to be around. They may think they can only get access to the deals, if
So
they.
you think that the girls were a means to the money was not a means to the girls?
I think the girls were a way primarily of juicing deals. You're more likely to do business with someone who provides you a currency you can't get elsewhere. You have these 60, 70-year-old dudes who can't meet, an 18-year-old, girl at a bar anymore. Where do you meet them? Well, you meet him at Jeffrey Epstein's place. Hey, if I do this deal with Jeffrey Epstein, he can supply me with girls. So even though this pipeline might not be in my interest, even if I really don't care about the petroleum market in Kenya, even if I really don't want to sell guns to Antigua, I know if I do this deal, then I had a great time at that last party. I'd like to be included at the next one. And so, that is a very plausible. I'm not saying definitively that's what's happening. That's what happened here, but that explains it, in my view, without even having to go, much farther than that. Because here's the thing: you don't have 201 files. You don't have these. An intelligence asset is someone who is formally recruited, and there needs to be counterintelligence done on that. It's a process. There's a vast field beyond asset, and it's called cooperative contact, or facilitator, or liaison. And these are the brokers, because you need these brokers, these fall guy type figures, but who also are willing to
broker makes sense. No, that's the key word. Now it's really hit. I'm going to keep you through the break. We're going to end on Radio and Rav. 10 seconds. We got uninterrupted time, Mike. So
this is why Bill Burns, the CIA director, met 3 times with Jeffrey Epstein.
Be right back.
Year.
All right, Mike, we have no more breaks, so I apologize. You were saying something about Bill Burns. No, I accept my apology. Radio is a relentless interrupter.
Look at Bill Burns, for example. As I mentioned, all of these, whether you're talking about Mark Rich, whether you're talking about Adnan Khashoggi, whether you're talking about Bruce Rappaport, they're all personal friends of the Central Intelligence Agency while maintaining close ties with both Israeli intelligence as well as several other partners across the Middle East and Western Europe. But what I'm getting at here with the Bill Burns case is Bill Burns, the CIA director, came out earlier this year, met 3 times with Jeffrey Epstein in 2014, including 2 times at Jeffrey Epstein's house. Now, remember, Bill Burns spent his whole year in the U.S. State Department, 35 years there, and ended up not only as Deputy Secretary of State, but as Undersecretary for Political Affairs. That's the number 3 spot. That's the CIA spot. According to the JFK files, the Arthur Schlesinger memo said that 48% of all political affairs folks at State were actually not at State. They were CIA under diplomatic cover of political affairs. That's the division Bill Burns ran before he became Deputy Secretary of State, and then on to becoming the head of the CIA in 2021. But from 2014 to 2021, Bill Burns goes private. He leaves running the CIA wing of the State Department to be the head of the Carnegie Endowment, one of the biggest, most influential, and oldest think tanks in the United States, who is frequently used as a back channel for shadow diplomacy. Now, that 2014, the very year, the first meeting that Bill Burns had with Jeffrey Epstein was while he was at the State Department. The next 2 he had in 2014 were while he was the head of the Carnegie Endowment. What he is doing there is he is going to Epstein's financial network behind Epstein to see what those donors want to do about funding the Carnegie Endowment, and what kind of deals, what kind of things they can do at Carnegie that the donors will give money for. That's why everybody goes to Epstein. That's why they go there for the money. That's why Bill Gates said he went to for Epstein, because of the money. That's what Bill Burns will go there for, because of the money. That's what the CIA will go there for, because of the money. We want this thing arranged. And the other thing is Jeffrey Epstein's, his specialty was in sheltering these things in complicated offshore debt structurings in order to hide them from regulators, in order to hide them from asset and collectors and creditors. And so he moved this whole thing through a complex Byzantine web of offshore bank accounts and Cayman Island bank accounts while brokering the deals. So that way, the CIA, Israeli intelligence, Saudi intelligence, everyone gets to be hands off. But he's not formally recruited, I don't believe.
Got it.
By,
so, no. That not formally recruited by. I'm sorry.
Yes, but you're not going to have a 201 file. You're not going to have an asset file. But what you will be able to find, I believe, is if you look at the transactions. For example, you look at all the trace requests done for requests of Epstein's name at CIA. You go to the Office of General Counsel. And for example, like what's actionable right now is, did the Office of General Counsel, the Central Intelligence Agency, have any input whatsoever in Alex Acosta's interview with Justice Department about Epstein's intelligence ties? What was the traffic between the head of OPR and Bill Barr, as well as Jeffrey Rosen, the Deputy Attorney General? Did they try to block an investigation into the intelligence ties in 2008? Is any of that shown in the 2020 November? I just don't think that Pam Bondi's even looked. I don't think that they even knew to look there for leads. And as well as everything that the CIA liaison at Justice, as well as the Office of General Counsel of CIA interfered in or gave input to about the 2020 OPR report. Because my suspicion is that you may see some very squirrely things around the CIA Office of General Counsel and the November 2020 OPR report. Justice Department should review that and tell us the contents of what they find. And then from there, you want to go to the CIA's financial division. You want to look at the special economic activities, to look at all the transactions Epstein was involved in, to see what financial interlocutors, what cooperative contacts were pulled in the finance space to put those deals together where Epstein was working. And I note among them, the Clinton Foundation. It was Epstein who put together, who is credited with coming up with the idea of the Clinton Global Initiative, which was a swirling hodgepodge from the Secretary of State of foreign mercenaries and oligarchs and Ukrainian oligarchs and Viktor Pinchuk and that whole network, all funneling money into this nonprofit for it to do various activities around the world that might help their own interests. All of this can be matched with CIA files in the special economic activities.
So just to explain it about, would it be fair to say that Epstein was a deep state fixer, moving money around to accomplish aims which benefited elite institutions and deep state intelligence goals? Is that a fair summary?
Yes, but I would add part-time. And this is the important part of it, as I see the case, is that he's a contact. He's someone they can go to on a among other potential folks in the space. He is a friend of the station. He is someone who is there if they need it done. But I don't think that's he's not talking to them every day.
No, I got
it's a periodic thing. Yes,
I'll add to it. So it'd be fair to say that Epstein was a part-time deep state fixer, moving money around to accomplish aims which benefited elite institutions and deep state goals. So now let's go to the let me just go. You want to chime in really quick?
The one thing I'd say is, there are deep state things, and you can make a weird argument that if you agree with the underlying foreign policy, that this is not unusual. I don't think you even need to go so far as to say deep state, even though obviously there are many deep state things about it. I mean, this is just how business is done at CIA. He was a financial fixer who could get access to money for covert operations, as well as structure them in a way that would conceal the source of those funds, which is something that we used all throughout the Cold War. When Jeffrey Epstein started doing this in the 1980s, we were in the middle of the Cold War. Is it possible that much of this type of activity is responsible for? I mean, we did this. We had financial fixers that we used to fund money to the Solidarity Movement in Poland, which operate in a very similar way in order to fund that union movement. And that's dirty work. It's money laundering. It's using these set up to fail debt instrument banks to do it. We gave it to the Solidarity Union group in Poland, but that's how we kicked the Soviet Union out of Poland and brought it into the Western world. So it's a complicated analysis, but that does not excuse. You have to tell us if it's there. You have to look yourself first. And unless we pressure them to say, hey, here's the exact file we know you have. Hey, here's the exact search terms. Here's exactly what you should tell the Office of General Counsel at the Central Intelligence Agency. Then I think that because there is a there, they're not going to want to do it if we don't give them specific asks.
Okay, so this is helpful to kind of hear your theory of the case. To push back on this, though, there were reports that there were lots of cameras of these underage girls on the island or in the facility in New Mexico. Do you think that it might have been soft, unspoken blackmail, meaning some of these guys might be more willing to do the deals because they might realize down the road that Jeffrey might have something on them, and that even though he could or couldn't, but it could be a little bit of a sword of Damocles over the head of some of these guys? Your thoughts, Mike Benz?
It's very possible. Like I said, I've been saying for years that I don't think Epstein would be the person doing the blackmail, because the whole purpose of being a financial fixer is getting everyone in your network to love you and having such a good time together, and you offering them experiences they can't get anywhere else, so that they'll sign a multi-million or billion-dollar, financing. You sort of spoil the party when you start blackmailing them. But to the extent that he's working with intelligence services who have access to the information that he's collecting, that in theory could be used for blackmail.
That's a good point. Yeah. So, I mean, over a period of time, let's say they have one blowout, disgusting, pedophilic retreat, and they know they're being blackmailed. Wouldn't that just be like a hard stop, like don't get near Jeffrey type thing? That never happened, right?
Well, that's the problem is, like, they give it to some intelligence agency, the supposed blackmail, and then the intelligence agency, someone says, we know that you were at Jeffrey Epstein's house in November 2011 with a 13-year-old girl. And then it's like, okay, well, that guy's blown forever, and so is everyone that he talks to. That person's not going to sign a $10 million financing deal. That person's not going to, invest in this Latin American operation or this North African, pipeline deal. That you can only get that if if it was on Jeffrey Epstein's security cameras. Oh crap, Epstein was recording me. I'm going to, tell my friends, my very powerful friends, don't be around Jeffrey Epstein. He's actually setting us up for blackmail the whole time. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't covertly collected and used as, for whatever purposes it might be used for. But, there were so many, Charlie, there were thousands of people over 40 years. Epstein started doing this in the 1980s. There's not a single person in all that time who's publicly come forward and said, I was blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, you could write, if one story like that would sell $5 million in book sales, and nobody's done it. That's not to say that it's impossible, but you have a much, much more relevant and trackable issue here, which was the role as a financier. How do you always hear Epstein described? Disgraced financier. The whole thing was the money. The CIA's main job is finding money for its operations. They need to go through fixers, and this is the guy who's tied to the head of the CIA, the head of almost every major figure in Israeli intelligence, the head of every major arms broker in Saudi Arabia, the friends with most of the royal family in the UK, Spain, Egypt. This is the guy who does not know much about finance, but he can arrange the deals because he's got powerful friends behind him who are putting up the money. And he makes his own money through, commissions in the 1980s and 90s, serving these clients.
And he's a fixer, but he also he was a schmoozer. People liked being around him. He held big parties, and he was a hyper social person. So he found a loophole in society, intelligence community funding, to get really rich, and he was just kind of like a super disgusting pervert, on the side, or as just as an element of that. For example, I bet that when he would have these parties, not every single one of the girls was 14 years old, but like he definitely had, and this is well documented, he had like he had a fascination. He liked them young, is what people would say, 13, 14, 15 years old. So then let me ask you a question then. Mike, if you were granted an opportunity, or anyone was granted an opportunity to talk to Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, what would you be most interested to learn from her that she would actually tell you? Like, what would she know? Because she did 2 interviews prior, one with CBS and one with like some some UK thing. And she wants to testify. Could we learn anything from her at all? Mike.
Yes, I would ask about the specifics of financings that touched government brokering of deals, either on behalf of or in partnership with government government agencies, including the U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, France, the UK, and the like. It was in 1991, for example, when it's reported that Maxwell linked up with Ghislaine. I would take that history from 1991 to, call it 2008 or 2019 if you want to go there, and I would go basically step by step through the major financing activities. And I would, because a lot of this is private, by the way. There's 100 different transactions we know that Epstein was involved in attempting to broker financing for, but there's a lot of these are also going to be non-public, and because they're not. This is not a traded on the NASDAQ, and so I would go through those financial transactions. I would look at U.S. State Department, basically diplomatic and intelligence ties to activity around those deals. And then I would look basically at the CIA files around that transaction or industry, and I would do a search for Epstein or the outside financiers. Basically, if you compile that list of all the different outside financial facilitators used for activities that Epstein looked like he was involved with, then. Because what you're going to have is you might not necessarily have Epstein's name. What you might have is a facilitator with access to capital in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and that might be what you have from an analyst memo or some CIA cable in 1999, and you think it's Epstein, but you're not really sure it's Epstein when you look at the analyst memo, and then you can ask Elaine that. Hey, a CIA cable that's recently been declassified refers to some retail some apparel agreement that's going to help basically the retail sector on the island of Haiti, but actually what the CIA wants to do is they want to unionize all the garment workers in order to use them as for street protests to assist the Aristide government or something like that. And it's going to be arranged through a financier based in the U.S. Virgin Islands associated with these redacted names of funds. Was Jeffrey Epstein that financier? These are the sorts of specific questions you would want. So you need to have that mind mapped. And I don't think that anyone in the Trump admin is even close to that because they're so fixated on the blackmail. They're so fixated on the kind of primal elements of it. They're missing out on the functional elements of why he would belong to intelligence at all.
So then what do you think Ghislaine Maxwell would know about the financial dealings? And I know you got to wrap in 2 minutes here. So just kind of wrap it up. What other let's put Ghislaine Maxwell to the side because you got 2 minutes. I'm sorry. Can you just say what other actions do you think could be taken immediately to get to the bottom of this? Because you're focused on something a lot of other people are not. A lot of people want client lists and they want, the sex stuff. You're much more interested in the intelligence of the money. 2 minutes, Mike, and then you got a dash.
Yeah. The OPR report is so simple. It's right down the hallway, Pam. It's right there, and that is something that you should be able to make public quickly. And that way we will know, because Epstein was asked if Acosta was reportedly asked for that OPR report if Epstein was an intelligence asset. And like I keep saying, that is not the question. Asset is not the word. asset has a formal file. You're going to find this as a facilitator. And I would encourage the folks investigating this to do a deep study on figures like Bruce Rappaport, figures like Mark Rich, figures like Adnan Khashoggi, figures like the head of the BCCI bank and the like. This is what you are looking for in the Epstein intelligence connection, and you need to be able to issue spot that. But first, make the OPR report transcripts of the Costa public, and then everything around the CIA Office of General Counsel, as well as the personal correspondence of Bill Barr and Jeffrey Rosen as the OPR report was being put together about the intelligence ties. Show us you've done that. Be able 1 month from now, be able to tell us, or 2 weeks from now, be able to tell us in a press conference that you looked at that OPR report and you're making it public so that we can check this off the box. And it'll be a show of good faith, I think, that the public will greatly appreciate.
God bless you. Mike Benz, we'll have you on soon. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.